The morning sun rose slowly over the Apache village, casting golden light on the small huts and the river that flowed gently beyond. The air was crisp, filled with the sounds of birds chirping and children laughing. The frontiersman awoke early, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a task well done. He had returned the girl safely to her family, earned the respect of the father and the villagers, and experienced a journey that had tested his courage, patience, and understanding. Yet even with the relief of success, he sensed that this day would bring another lesson, one about gratitude, honor, and the quiet power of human connection. As he prepared his belongings for the journey back to his own cabin along the river, he noticed the small girl approaching him. She moved confidently now, her shyness replaced by a quiet sense of trust. She carried a small bundle, wrapped carefully in cloth. Her dark eyes shone as she handed it to him, her hands trembling slightly. "For you," she said in broken English, her voice soft but clear. The frontiersman accepted it with a gentle smile, opening the bundle to find a small handmade gift inside a beautifully carved wooden figure. Simple, yet full of care and meaning. He looked up at her father, who stood nearby, watching closely. The man nodded, a silent confirmation that the gift was given with respect and gratitude. "This is from our family," the father said, "for your courage and for saving our child." The frontiersman felt a warmth in his chest. He had acted out of instinct and kindness, without thought of reward. Yet here was a token of respect and appreciation that carried far more value than gold or coins ever could. The girl's mother stepped forward, smiling gently. She reached out and touched his arm, a small but meaningful gesture of thanks. "You have done a great thing," she said softly. The frontiersman nodded, humbled. Words were limited, but the understanding was clear. Courage, compassion, and respect had bridged the gap between their worlds, creating a bond that transcended language and culture. After a brief farewell, the father called the frontiersman aside. He spoke quietly, carefully choosing each word. "In our village, such deeds are remembered. You have shown honor, patience, and courage. We would like to reward you further, not with gold, but with trust, respect, and our eternal gratitude. You are always welcome here." The frontiersman bowed his head humbly. "Thank you," he said. "That is more than enough for me. I only did what was right." As the morning progressed, the villagers gathered to watch him prepare for departure. Children ran around, laughing, while the adults carried out their daily tasks. The small girl stayed close, holding his hand until the last possible moment. She had grown more confident and brave in just a short time, and he felt proud of her resilience. The river rescue had been a moment of danger, but the trust and lessons shared since then had strengthened her spirit. Before leaving, he walked along the river one last time, remembering the events of the past 2 days. The water, once wild and threatening, now seemed calm and peaceful. He could still recall the panic in the girl's eyes, the way she struggled against the current, and the moment when he had pulled her to safety. Those memories were vivid, and they reminded him that courage often came in small, decisive actions. He had acted without hesitation, guided by instinct and compassion, and that had made all the difference. The journey back home was quiet. The frontiersman walked slowly along the familiar paths, carrying the small handcrafted gift with care. The sun rose higher in the sky, warming the land and filling the forest with light. Birds sang in the trees, and the gentle rustle of leaves accompanied his steps. Though the events of the past days had been intense, he felt a deep sense of peace. Courage, kindness, and respect had prevailed, and a child's life had been saved. As he approached his cabin near the river, he reflected on the lessons learned. The encounter with the small Apache girl and her family had taught him about trust, humility, and the power of human connection. Courage was not only about facing danger, it was also about acting with integrity, showing compassion, and respecting others. The river, the forest, and the village had all been teachers in their own ways, revealing truths about life and the strength of the human spirit. That evening, he sat by his own fireplace, the handcrafted gift resting beside him. He held it in his hands, studying the careful carvings and the thoughtfulness behind it. It was a reminder that even small gestures could carry immense meaning, and that true gratitude was expressed not only in words but in recognition, respect, and honor. The gift symbolized the bond he had formed with the girl and her family, a bond that would last long after he had returned to his own life along the river. The small Apache girl, safe and happy with her family, would remember him as a protector and friend, and he would remember her as a symbol of courage, trust, and resilience. Their encounter had been brief, but it had left a lasting impact on both their lives. It was a reminder that even in a world filled with challenges and danger, acts of kindness and bravery could create connections that transcended differences, building understanding and respect in the days that followed. News of the river rescue spread quietly through nearby settlements. The frontiersman was recognized not for fame or wealth, but for courage, compassion, and a willingness to act when a life was at stake. He had demonstrated that true heroism was not measured in medals or coins, but in the choices made when others needed help. His actions had saved a life, built trust, and strengthened bonds between two different communities. The river continued to flow past his cabin, calm and steady, carrying memories of the rescue and the journey with it. He often walked along its banks, thinking of the small girl, her family, and the lessons learned in those 2 unforgettable days. Courage, trust, and kindness had shaped the experience, leaving behind a story that would be remembered by all involved. Though life on the frontier remained challenging and unpredictable, the frontiersman felt a quiet confidence. He knew that he had done what was right, guided by instinct and compassion. The bond formed with the small girl and her family was a reminder that even brief encounters could leave lasting impressions, teaching lessons about bravery, honor, and humanity that could endure a lifetime. Weeks later, he returned to the edge of the river, the site of the rescue. The water shimmered in the sunlight, flowing steadily, as if carrying away the fears and dangers of the past. He knelt beside the riverbank, remembering the small, frightened hands reaching for him, the struggle against the current, and the relief when she was safe. He smiled softly, knowing that courage and kindness had prevailed, and that a life had been changed forever. The small handcrafted gift remained on a shelf in his cabin, a constant reminder of the encounter and its significance. Every time he looked at it, he thought of the girl's bravery, her family's trust, and the quiet strength that had carried them through a dangerous moment. It was a symbol not just of gratitude, but of the enduring power of human connection, respect, and compassion. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, the frontiersman felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had acted with courage, protected a life, and built bonds that would last. The girl and her family had returned to safety, and he had earned the respect of a proud and strong community. Life on the frontier would continue, with its challenges and surprises, but the lessons of the river rescue would remain with him forever. In the quiet of the evening, he sat by the fire reflecting on the journey. He thought about the importance of acting with integrity, the value of trust, and the strength found in kindness. The world could be harsh and unpredictable, but moments like these reminded him that courage and compassion could make a difference, leaving lasting marks on the lives of others. The river, ever flowing, carried memories of danger, hope, and courage. It had been a teacher, a witness, and a symbol of life's unpredictability. The small Apache girl, once struggling against its current, had grown stronger through the ordeal, and he had learned that even in moments of fear, trust and bravery could prevail. Their shared experience had left an indelible mark on both their lives, and as night fell over the frontier, with stars twinkling in the clear sky, the frontiersman knew that the story of the river rescue would live in memory. In lessons learned, and in the quiet bond between a child and the man who had saved her life, he had faced danger, acted with courage, and earned a respect that went far beyond words or rewards. It was a reminder that in the wilderness, as in life, bravery and kindness could change the world, one act at a time. The morning sun had barely started to stretch its golden fingers over the horizon when the frontiersman set out along the winding river. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the smell of wet earth and wildflowers. He had walked this stretch many times before, knowing every bend, every rock, and every ripple in the water. Yet, something about that morning felt different. The river, usually calm and soothing, seemed restless. Its gentle hum interrupted by a faint, frantic splashing that made him pause at first. He thought it might be a deer caught in the current, or perhaps a log tumbling downstream. But as he walked closer, his sharp eyes caught a small shape struggling against the water. It was a child, barely able to keep her head above the waves. Panic surged through him. Without thinking twice, he dropped his fishing gear and ran toward the riverbank. The current was stronger than it looked, twisting and turning with sudden bursts of energy. The girl, small and delicate, flailed her arms, her dark hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide with fear. The frontiersman didn't hesitate. He waded into the river, feeling the icy water bite at his legs, then his chest. The current tugged at him too, trying to push him downstream, but his strong arms kept him steady. Reaching the girl, he grasped her small frame, lifting her out of the water. Her body was trembling violently, and her lips were blue from the cold. He carried her to the riverbank, laying her gently on the grass. It's okay. You're safe now, he said in a calm, soothing voice, even though his heart was racing. He rubbed her arms and shoulders to warm her up, careful not to scare her more. The girl whimpered softly, shivering, but she didn't pull away. Her dark eyes looked at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. She was so young, barely old enough to speak properly, and clearly far from home. The frontiersman quickly gathered some dry grass and made a small bed for her to lie on. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her tiny body, hoping it would help her recover from the cold. "Don't worry," he murmured again. "You're safe here. I won't let anything happen to you." The girl's lips trembled, but a faint nod was all she could manage. Her small hands clutched his coat, as if afraid that letting go would make her fall back into the river. After a few moments, she seemed to gain some strength. She looked at the man curiously, tilting her head. Though she didn't speak much, her gestures were clear. She pointed toward the trees on the other side of the river, and then toward the sky, as if trying to explain where she had come from. The frontiersman watched carefully. He knew that she must be from one of the Apache villages nearby. He had met a few Apache families in the past and respected them greatly. Yet, he also knew that approaching the village without care could be dangerous for both of them. The child's story, though unspoken, began to unfold in small signs. She mimicked falling into the river with her hands, shivering as she did so, and pointed to her wet clothes, showing that she had been there long enough to get soaked. She then gestured toward her home, a small collection of huts in the distance that the frontiersman had once glimpsed while scouting the area. It was clear that she had wandered too close to the river and had slipped. Unable to pull herself out, the frontiersman's heart ached for her. He had spent most of his life in these lands, but moments like this reminded him that the wilderness was beautiful but unforgiving. One misstep could mean disaster. And for a child, the dangers were even greater. He decided that the first thing he must do was make sure she was safe and warm, before worrying about how to return her home. He built a small fire near the riverbank, careful to keep it away from the dry grass that could catch easily. The smoke spiraled into the morning sky, and the girl watched it with wide eyes, fascinated and comforted at the same time. He boiled some water in a small pot he carried and gave her a few sips. Her lips were still blue, and the warm water seemed to bring life back into her body. Slowly, she began to relax, leaning against him, her tiny head resting on his shoulder. As they waited for the morning to grow brighter, the frontiersman kept a careful watch on the river. He knew that animals often came down to drink at this hour, and he wanted to ensure that no harm came to the girl while she regained her strength. He talked to her in gentle tones, telling her simple stories about the river, the animals, and the sun. She didn't understand every word, but the sound of his voice was soothing, and she listened intently. Hours passed slowly. The sun rose higher, casting its warm light across the river and the forest beyond. Birds chirped and flitted between branches, their songs a reminder that life went on, even after moments of fear and danger. The girl began to dry off in the sun, her clothes still damp but her body finally warming. She smiled faintly at the man, a shy, tentative smile that seemed to say thank you without words. The frontiersman realized how lucky she had been. The river could have easily swept her away, and if he had not been there, the outcome would have been tragic. He felt a surge of gratitude that he had been in the right place at the right time, able to act quickly and save a life. Yet he also felt the weight of responsibility. This child was far from home, and he knew that he had to find a way to return her safely to her family. By late morning, he decided it was time to move. He could not stay by the river forever. He gathered some supplies, water, dried meat, and a blanket tanned, prepared to lead her toward the area where her village might be. The girl followed obediently, her small hand in his, trusting him completely. The bond between them, though brief, had grown strong in the face of danger. As they walked through the forested area along the river, he noticed signs of wildlife and familiar landmarks. He spoke softly to her, pointing out trees, rocks, and animal tracks, keeping her engaged and calm. She mimicked his gestures, her eyes brightening with curiosity and trust. Every now and then, she would glance toward the river, as if checking that it was still there. A reminder of the ordeal they had survived together. The morning passed into early afternoon. The air grew warmer, and the sounds of the forest seemed to embrace them, offering a sense of safety and comfort. The frontiersman was careful to stay on paths that were visible from a distance, just in case anyone came looking for the child. He thought about the Apache people he had met before, their strength, wisdom, and pride. He hoped that when they reunited with her, they would understand that his intentions were good, that he had saved their child and meant no harm. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, they spotted smoke rising in the distance. The frontiersman knew immediately that it came from the village. Relief washed over him, and he quickened his pace, holding the girl close to keep her safe. She began to recognize the shapes of huts and familiar landmarks. Her small steps became quicker, and a faint excitement flickered in her eyes. When they reached the edge of the village, the girl ran ahead, calling out in her own language. Her family emerged, startled at first, then overjoyed when they saw her safe and unharmed. The frontiersman stepped back, giving them space while keeping a careful eye on the situation. The father, a tall and strong man with a serious expression, approached cautiously. He studied the stranger who had returned his daughter safely. The child clung to her father for a moment, then turned to glance at the man who had saved her. Her eyes shone with gratitude, and she whispered something in her language that the frontiersman did not understand, but he knew it was a thank you. The father nodded, a sign of respect, and extended his hand. The frontiersman shook it, feeling a deep sense of connection and understanding by the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon. The girl was safely back with her family, and the frontiersman stood at the edge of the village, feeling a mix of relief and quiet pride. He had acted without hesitation, guided by instinct and compassion. That single act of courage had saved a life and created a bond that would be remembered by all involved. As he walked away from the village, the sound of the river behind him, he reflected on the morning's events. Life in the Wild West was unpredictable and often dangerous, but it was also filled with moments of courage, trust, and humanity. And on that day, he had witnessed the power of one simple act to step forward when another's life depended on it. The river continued to flow, calm once more, carrying with it the memory of a small girl who had struggled, a man who had risked himself, and a bond that bridged to worlds in the quiet, wild beauty of the frontier. The day after the river rescue dawned clear and bright. The frontiersman awoke early, the memories of yesterday's events still fresh in his mind. The sun cast long, golden beams over the hills, and the wind whispered softly through the tall grass. Though the danger of the river was behind him, he could not stop thinking about the small Apache girl and the fragile trust that had formed between them in such a short time. He decided to return to the edge of the river, partly out of habit, partly out of curiosity, and partly because he could not shake the feeling that the river itself had played a role in yesterday's events. As he walked, he reflected on the girl's bravery. Despite her small size and young age, she had fought the strong current with all her strength, struggling to survive. He thought about how easily things could have ended differently, and a quiet sense of gratitude filled him. Not everyone was lucky enough to encounter a hero or to be the hero. When he reached the riverbank, The water shimmered in the morning light, calm and almost peaceful now. Yet he knew better. The river was unpredictable, full of hidden currents and sudden drops. He knelt by the edge and ran his hands through the cool water, thinking about how fragile life could be in the wilderness. The girl's small hands had grasped at the water yesterday, fighting against its strength, and he could still see the panic in her eyes. That image lingered in his mind, reminding him why he had acted without hesitation, as he stood and prepared to walk back toward his camp. He noticed movement in the trees nearby. A figure emerged, shy and cautious. It was the girl, her dark hair glinting in the sunlight, her small frame moving carefully through the underbrush. She had returned, perhaps drawn by curiosity, or perhaps wanting to be near the man who had saved her. She did not speak, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. She approached slowly, her steps careful and measured, as if unsure whether she was welcome. "Good morning," he said softly, kneeling to meet her at eye level. "It's good to see you again." The girl's lips curved into a faint smile, and she nodded. She reached out her small hand, and he took it gently. Her fingers were warm now, no longer stiff from the cold water, and her grip, though small, was surprisingly firm. He felt a connection growing between them, a bond of trust. Fragile but strong, the frontiersman knew he had to keep her safe until she could be returned to her family. Yesterday had been about immediate danger, but today was about understanding and preparation. He began to think carefully about how he could ensure her safety, without frightening her or upsetting the delicate balance between the settlers and the Apache. His experience in the wilderness had taught him that patience, observation, and respect were often more powerful than strength or speed. He decided to take her on a small walk along the river, staying close to the familiar water while keeping an eye out for signs of danger. The girl followed obediently, her small hand in his. As they walked, he spoke softly, telling her about the plants, the animals, and the land around them. He pointed out deer tracks, rabbit holes, and birds perched in the trees. She watched carefully, mimicking his gestures, her eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. Even in her fear, she had a keen intelligence and an eagerness to learn. The frontiersman realized that this small girl had been through a lot. She had likely wandered from her village alone and faced the river's current without anyone to guide her. Yet, despite the danger, she had survived, showing remarkable resilience and courage. He thought about how he could help her remember that courage and how he could guide her safely back to her family. Every step they took along the river was a lesson in trust for both of them. By late morning, they found a quiet spot under the shade of a large oak tree. The frontiersman spread a blanket on the ground and offered the girl some dried fruit and water. She ate slowly, her small hands picking at the food with care. He watched her carefully, making sure she was comfortable and not afraid. She looked up at him occasionally, her dark eyes full of questions she could not yet ask in words. He smiled gently and explained things simply, describing the river, the forest, the path they would take when it was time to return to her village. As the hours passed, the girl began to relax more fully. She played with the blanket, arranging it into little shapes, and laughed softly when a bird landed nearby. The sound of her laughter was a balm to the frontiersman's soul. He realized that the act of saving her had not only changed her life, but had also brought unexpected joy into his own. There was a simplicity in these moments, a reminder that even in the wild, dangerous world of the frontier, there were moments of peace, trust, and happiness. The frontiersman decided that he would spend the day preparing for the journey back to her village. He gathered some supplies from his pack: a small knife, a length of rope, some dried meat, and extra water. He explained each item to her as he worked, showing her how they would be used and why they were important. She watched attentively, absorbing every detail. Though she did not speak much, her understanding was clear in the way she nodded and repeated his gestures. By mid-afternoon, he began to walk with her along a narrow path that led away from the river. The girl's small hand remained firmly in his. He noticed that she was gaining confidence with each step, moving more freely and occasionally glancing back at the river. He spoke to her about the journey ahead, describing the landmarks they would encounter and the importance of staying together. She listened carefully, her eyes bright with interest and understanding. Along the way, the frontiersmen reflected on the challenges they would face. The wilderness was unpredictable, and while the girl was stronger than she seemed, she was still vulnerable. He needed to be vigilant, ready to respond to any threat, whether it came from the river, the forest, or even misunderstandings with other travelers. Yet he felt a quiet confidence. Yesterday had shown him that courage and quick thinking could make a difference, and he was determined to protect her no matter what. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, they reached a small clearing. The frontiersman decided it was time to set up a temporary camp for the night. He built a small fire, careful to choose a safe spot away from dry grass and trees. The girl watched in fascination as he worked, her dark eyes wide with curiosity. He explained each step as he went, showing her how to gather wood, arrange the fire, and stay safe. She mimicked some of his movements, eager to learn. He encouraged her gently. That night, as they sat by the fire, the girl leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. The warmth of the flames and the quiet crackle of burning wood created a sense of safety and comfort. The frontiersman told her stories of the land, of the animals and plants, and of the small adventures he had experienced along the river. She listened intently, occasionally asking questions with gestures or small words she had learned. Each answer built her understanding of the world and strengthened the bond between them. Sleep came slowly that night, but when it did, it was peaceful. The frontiersman kept watch over the girl, listening to the soft sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the gentle flow of the river. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that this small life rested in his hands. Yet there was also a sense of fulfillment. He had acted with courage, guided by instinct and compassion, and now he had the privilege of protecting and teaching a child who had shown remarkable bravery herself. When dawn broke the next morning, the girl awoke first. She looked around, taking in the sights and sounds of the forest. She smiled faintly at the frontiersman, a sign of trust and comfort that had grown stronger overnight. He smiled back, offering her some water and a small portion of food. They prepared to continue their journey toward her village, ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring. As they walked, the frontiersman reflected on the past 24 hours. He had rescued a life, yes, but he had also learned about trust, courage, the quiet strength that a child could possess. The girl, despite her fear and vulnerability, had shown him that even in the most dangerous situations, determination and bravery could shine through. He knew that their journey together was far from over, but he felt confident that they would succeed. Guided by mutual trust and respect, the river, which had seemed so threatening the day before, now appeared calm and serene. Yet he knew that danger could return at any moment, and he remained vigilant. He glanced at the girl who walked beside him with a growing sense of confidence and curiosity. She was learning, adapting, and trusting him completely, and he felt honored to share this experience with her. Together, they moved forward, two small figures in a vast and unpredictable wilderness, bound by courage, trust, and the quiet promise of safety. By midday, the first signs of the village appeared on the horizon. Smoke rose gently from small huts, and the sound of voices carried faintly on the wind. The girl's eyes widened in recognition, and a small smile spread across her face. The frontiersman slowed his pace, letting her take the lead. He knew that the moment of reunion would soon arrive, and he felt a mixture of anticipation and pride. The trust they had built, the lessons learned, the courage displayed would all culminate in this single moment, the return of a child to her family, safe and unharmed. The frontiersman and the small Apache girl moved steadily along the narrow path that led through the rolling hills and dense forests. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of damp earth and pine. Birds flitted between the branches, their songs filling the quiet spaces of the forest. The girl walked close beside him, her small hand firmly in his. It's a silent bond of trust and security that had grown stronger with each passing hour. As they walked, the frontiersman kept a careful eye on the landscape. He knew that the wilderness could be both beautiful and dangerous. Loose rocks, sudden drops, and hidden streams all posed risks to a child as small as the one beside him. He guided her carefully, pointing out obstacles and helping her step over roots and rocks. She followed his instructions closely, clearly learning quickly from his experience. Her movements became more confident, and he smiled quietly at her determination. He paused at a small clearing to rest, letting the girl drink from the water he had carried in his canteen. She drank slowly, looking up at him with a faint smile. He handed her a piece of dried meat, which she nibbled on carefully. "We are almost there," he said softly, though he could not be sure. The village was close, but the exact location still remained hidden beyond the trees and hills. The girl's small gestures indicated that she knew the general direction, pointing toward the distant smoke rising in the morning sun. After a short rest, they continued. The path became steeper and more rugged, and the frontiersman helped the girl navigate the tricky terrain. He kept talking to her in calm, reassuring tones, explaining each step, and pointing out the natural features around them. "See those rocks? Step over them slowly. Good. Now hold my hand tight." "That's it." She followed him closely, trusting his guidance completely. He felt a quiet pride in her courage and focus. The journey was long and tiring, but neither of them complained. The girl occasionally stopped to point at birds or plants, her curiosity brightening the walk. He would kneel beside her, showing her how to gently touch a leaf or watch a squirrel without frightening it. She learned quickly, absorbing every small lesson like a sponge. For the frontiersman, these small moments were precious, a reminder that even in a harsh and unpredictable world, there was room for learning, trust, and connection. By midday, the signs of the Apache village grew clearer. Small trails led through the forest, and the sounds of voices and laughter reached them faintly. Smoke rose gently from several huts in the distance, carrying the scent of cooking fires. The girl's steps quickened, and she glanced back at him, her eyes shining with anticipation. He smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. Their journey had been difficult, but they had managed it together, and the reward was in sight. As they neared the village, the frontiersman slowed his pace, allowing the girl to take the lead. He knew that this moment was delicate. The Apache people were proud and cautious, and any misstep could create misunderstanding. He needed to show respect while ensuring the girl's safe return. The girl ran ahead a few steps, calling out in her native language. Her voice carried across the small clearing, and soon figures began to emerge from the huts. The father appeared first, a tall and strong man with a serious expression. His eyes widened when he saw his daughter safe and unharmed. He rushed forward, his face a mixture of fear and relief. The girl ran into his arms, clinging tightly as he held her close. Tears glistened in his eyes as he whispered words the frontiersman could not understand. Yet the emotion was clear: joy, relief, and deep gratitude. The frontiersman stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. The father's eyes flicked to him, narrowing at first, then softening as he recognized the sincerity in the stranger's face. The girl looked up at it. Him, her eyes shining, and whispered something that the frontiersman could not understand. He smiled gently, knowing it was a thank you. The father nodded, a sign of cautious acceptance. The villagers gathered around, curious about the man who had returned the child safely. Some whispered among themselves, but all eyes were on the girl and her father. The frontiersman remained calm, giving space for the reunion while standing ready to respond if needed. He had acted out of instinct and compassion, and now he needed to allow the villagers to witness the results of his efforts. The father finally spoke to him in broken English, asking questions about how he had found the girl, how she had fallen into the river, and whether she had been hurt. The frontiersman explained carefully, recounting the events of the previous day. He described how he had seen her struggling, jumped into the river, and rescued her from the strong current. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully, and the father listened intently, nodding as he understood. After a long moment of tense silence, the father extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice deep and steady. The frontiersman shook it firmly, feeling a sense of mutual respect. The girl looked on, smiling faintly, and reached up to touch his arm. It was a small gesture, but it carried a world of gratitude. The frontiersmen smiled, knowing that their bond, formed in moments of danger, had not been broken by the return to her family. The father insisted on offering a reward, a gesture of appreciation and honor for the man who had risked his life to save a child. The frontiersman hesitated, shaking his head. "I did what anyone would do," he said quietly. The child's safety was more important than anything else. The father's eyes softened and he nodded. Understanding that courage and kindness could not always be measured in material terms, the villagers watched the exchange, murmuring among themselves. They recognized the bravery of the frontiersman, and while they had initially been cautious, they now respected him. The child clung to her father for a few more moments before turning back to him. She gave a small smile, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had happened. The frontiersman nodded back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had acted with integrity, and the trust that had formed between them remained intact. As the sun moved across the sky, the father invited the frontiersman to sit with them and share a meal. They prepared simple food over the fire, and while the language barrier made conversation limited, gestures and expressions conveyed warmth and gratitude. The girl sat nearby, occasionally glancing at the man who had saved her, a quiet connection that needed no words. The frontiersman enjoyed the simplicity of the meal, feeling accepted and welcomed despite being an outsider. Throughout the afternoon, the frontiersman observed the village. Children played near the huts, laughing and chasing one another. Women tended to cooking and weaving, and men worked on tools and hunting equipment. He noticed the care and skill in their work, the pride they took in their daily lives, and the strength of their community. It was a life deeply connected to the land, resilient and proud. He felt honored to witness it firsthand. By late afternoon, the girl had regained her energy fully. She ran to the river nearby, laughing and splashing in the shallow water, her father watching closely. The frontiersman stood at a respectful distance, allowing the family their time together. Yet, he could not help but smile, knowing that he had played a part in this reunion. His actions, guided by instinct and courage, had restored a sense of safety and trust to a family who had feared losing their child forever. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a warm glow over the village, the father approached him again. "You are welcome here," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your courage will not be forgotten." The frontiersman nodded, feeling a quiet pride. It was not about reward or recognition. It was about doing the right thing, protecting life, and earning respect through action. The day ended with a sense of peace. The child slept soundly near her parents, safe and unharmed. The frontiersman packed his belongings, ready to leave, but feeling a lasting connection to the village and its people. He knew that the memory of this day would stay with him forever, the danger of the river, small hands he had held, the trust that had formed, and the joy of a family reunited. As he walked away from the village, the sounds of laughter and life fading behind him, he reflected on the lessons he had learned. Courage was not just about strength. It was about acting with integrity and compassion. Trust could be formed in moments, even in the most dangerous circumstances. And sometimes a single act of bravery could bridge worlds, connecting people who might otherwise have remained strangers. The river, calm and flowing behind him, seemed to echo these lessons. It had been both a threat and a guide, a reminder of the unpredictability of life in the wilderness. The frontiersman knew that the river, the girl, and the village would remain in his memory forever. And as he moved forward, he felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had acted rightly, with courage and respect. In a world that often demanded both in equal measure, the morning after the reunion began quietly in the Apache village. The small girl woke early, rubbing her eyes and stretching before glancing toward the frontiersman. He was sitting by the edge of the clearing, sharpening a small knife with careful, deliberate strokes. When she saw him, her face brightened, and she ran over to greet him. The father, standing nearby, watched the interaction with a mixture of curiosity and respect. The frontiersman smiled and knelt to meet her at eye level. "Good morning," he said gently. "Did you sleep well?" The girl nodded eagerly, her dark eyes shining. She had grown used to his presence over the past day, and the bond between them was strong. Though she could not speak much in English, her gestures, expressions, and quiet trust spoke volumes. The father approached slowly. His tall frame and strong features carried the authority of a tribal leader, but his eyes were warm. He spoke in broken English, careful and deliberate. "You saved her life. I am thankful. Our family. We owe you much." The frontiersman shook his head gently. "I did what anyone would do. The important thing is that she is safe." The father nodded. But there was a hint of pride and admiration in his expression. The villagers had begun to gather around, curious about the stranger who had returned the child safely. Some of the men whispered quietly, pointing toward him, while the women watched from a respectful distance. The frontiersman remained calm, keeping his hands visible and his posture relaxed. He knew that respect and patience were as important as courage in situations like this. The father noticed this and seemed to approve, giving him a silent nod. After a moment, the father invited him to sit and share a meal. Simple dishes were prepared: cornbread, roasted vegetables, and dried meat. The language remained a barrier. Gestures and expressions conveyed warmth and gratitude. The girl sat nearby, occasionally glancing at the man who had saved her life, and he smiled at her quietly. There was a silent understanding between them, a recognition of courage, trust, and compassion. As they ate, the father began to speak more openly. He explained that the girl had wandered near the river while fetching water, lost her footing, and fallen into the strong current. He had been searching frantically for her when he heard the news that a stranger had found and rescued her. Relief and gratitude had filled his heart, but he had also felt cautious. He did not know the intentions of outsiders. Protecting his child was his first priority. The frontiersman listened carefully, nodding and understanding. He respected the father's cautious approach, knowing that a man's protective instincts for his child were universal. "I understand," he said softly. "I acted quickly to save her. That was all I could do." Father's expression softened further, and he gestured for the villagers to listen. He wanted them to know the truth, that the stranger had acted with courage and kindness, not malice. The villagers murmured among themselves, impressed by the story. They recognized the bravery required to dive into the river and save a child. Some of the younger men began to speak more openly, asking questions about the frontiersman's life, his travels, and his experiences in the wilderness. Though he spoke simply, he shared his stories carefully, showing respect for their customs and culture. The villagers listened intently, and the tension in the air gradually faded into curiosity and respect. The girl watched him closely, her small hands fidgeting with a piece of cloth. She seemed eager to show her gratitude, but her shyness held her back. The frontiersman reached out gently, offering her a comforting smile. She relaxed slightly, her small fingers brushing against his hand. He realized how much she had grown in confidence since the river rescue. She had faced danger, survived, and learned that courage and trust could help her overcome fear. After the meal, the father approached the frontiersman privately. "You have done more than save her," he said quietly. "You have shown honor, respect, and courage. These are gifts that cannot be measured. But we have a custom. We give a reward for such deeds." The frontiersman shook his head again, smiling gently. "I do not need a reward. Seeing her safe is enough for me." The father studied him carefully, nodding slowly. He understood that true courage often came without expectation of reward. Yet he insisted, explaining that in their tradition, such an act of bravery could not go unrecognized. The frontiersman listened with respect, acknowledging the father's customs without compromising his own humility. It was a delicate balance, but one that both men seemed to understand. Throughout the afternoon, the frontiersman spent time observing the village. He helped where he could carrying firewood, showing the girl how to gather safe herbs from the forest, and assisting the villagers with small tasks. Though simple, these actions further strengthened the bond between him and the community. He saw the pride in their work, the skill in their craft, and the care they took in raising their children. He felt honored to witness this way of life and to be a part of it. Even briefly, the girl remained close, curious about everything he did. She asked questions through gestures, pointing at tools, plants, and animals, and he explained patiently. She learned quickly, her eyes bright with curiosity and understanding. He realized that this moment, though small, was as important as the river rescue itself. It was a time to teach, to connect, and to show the value of patience, care, trust. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, the father called the frontiersman aside. He led him to a small hut where the girl's mother and other family members were gathered. There, they presented a small, carefully wrapped gift, a token of gratitude. The frontiersman accepted it humbly, understanding the significance more than the material value. It was a symbol of respect, appreciation, and honor, and he felt deeply moved by the gesture. The father then spoke once more, addressing both the frontiersman and the girl. "You have brought honor to our family," he said, "and you have taught us that courage and kindness cross boundaries. We will not forget this day." The frontiersman nodded, humbled. He realized that this experience had changed him as much as it had changed the girl and her family. Courage, trust, and respect were universal values, capable of bridging worlds and connecting people in profound ways. That evening, as the village settled for the night, the girl sat near the fire, her small hands busy weaving a simple pattern in a piece of cloth. She looked up at the frontiersman occasionally, her eyes filled with trust and gratitude. He smiled softly, understanding that their bond would remain, even after he left. Though their time together had been brief, it had been filled with moments of courage, learning, and connection that neither would forget. The frontiersman reflected on the past 2 days. He had faced danger, acted quickly, and saved a life. But he had also learned about humility, patience, and the importance of understanding another culture. The father's insistence on a reward had been less about material wealth and more about respect and tradition. In accepting it humbly, he had honored their customs while maintaining his own principles. As night fell, the firelight flickered across the village, casting warm shadows. The frontiersman felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had acted rightly, guided by instinct, courage, and compassion. He had returned a child to her family safely and had earned the respect of a proud and strong community. The river rescue had been the beginning, but the lessons of trust, honor, and courage would remain with him forever. Before retiring for the night, he took a quiet walk to the edge of the village. The stars shimmered overhead, and the distant sound of the river reminded him of the events that had begun this journey. He thought of the girl, now safe and happy with her family, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Courage and kindness had made a difference, and he had witnessed firsthand how a single act could change lives. Returning to the small hut where he would rest, the frontiersman noticed the girl's eyes following him. She gave a small, shy smile before closing her eyes for sleep. He whispered softly, "Good night. Sleep well." The simplicity of the moment, the quiet understanding, and the trust between them left a lasting impression. It was a reminder that true courage and compassion often showed themselves in small, unspoken ways. The night passed quietly. The frontiersman slept lightly, keeping an ear tuned to the sounds of the village and the river. He felt a sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that he had done what was right. The bond between him and the small girl, formed in the danger of the river and strengthened through trust and care, was a reminder that human connection could transcend language, culture, and circumstance. By morning, the village was alive with activity. Children played, elders spoke quietly, and the adults tended to their daily tasks. The father approached the frontiersman once more, his expression serious but kind. "You have honored us," he said. "You have shown courage, patience, and respect. We will always remember your deed." The frontiersman nodded humbly. "I only did what was right," he said. "Your daughter is safe, and that is all that matters." Before leaving the village, the frontiersman spent a few more hours with the girl, teaching her small lessons about the forest, the river, and the ways of the land. She listened attentively, absorbing every word and gesture. He saw the confidence she had gained, the resilience she had shown, and the trust she had placed in him.